Hi, I'm Dorothy Gibbons, CEO and co-founder of The Rose. She didn't know about The Rose when she was diagnosed, and this young woman thinks her life would have been a whole lot different if she had. LaTrease Price-Gistard joined an army that no one would want to be a part of, but it has been an army that is making a difference in the world. Here's another story of a young woman who was too young for a mammogram, but she sure wasn't too young for breast cancer. Let's talk about your breast. A different kind of podcast presented to you by The Rose, a breast center of excellence and a Texas treasure. You're going to hear frank discussions about tough topics, and you're going to learn why knowing about your breast could save your life. Join us as we hear another story and we answer those tough questions that you may have. So LaTrease has been with us for a long time, actually, as a volunteer, and one of our favorites when it comes to talking with her about her diagnosis. But you were pretty young when you were diagnosed. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I was 36 years old, and I discovered a lump in my right breast after taking a shower. And, of course, I immediately panicked because at that time, the first thing that popped in my mind was when I found a lump in my breast was cancer. And then that immediately went to death. At the time, I was a single mother of two. And so so many thoughts ran through my mind, needless to say. And it was just even before even becoming diagnosed, I was already afraid, just initially right out the gate.
So, LaTrease, were you doing your monthly or was this just by accident?
It was by accident.
One of the things that I remember about your story is that for 6 months there, you really had a misdiagnosis with whomever you were going to at the time. But then how did that all come around?
Well, after I found the lump, I called my primary care physician at the time, and she scheduled me to have a mammogram. And when the results came back to her and the radiologist, it just looked like a cyst. And they were factoring the fact that I was just 36 years old at the time. But they did not take into account that I do have a family history of breast cancer. And so I was...
And had you shared that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. So you already knew that. Okay.
Yes. And so I was really surprised at the reluctancy to move further with further testing, knowing that there was a family history of breast cancer and just going with just a mammogram and not seeking a biopsy for additional testing. And so coincidentally, after I found my lump in my breast, my friend Melanie, who had been in the Air Force at the time, she had been stationed in Germany, and I had not talked to her in years. She happened to call me that very next morning after I found it. And of course, I was still really upset. And so she told me to call her mother, Miss AC, who happened to be a breast cancer survivor as well. And so I called her mother, and, she understood why I was really upset and everything. And she just told me, she says, well, let's just wait and see what, the mammogram comes back saying. And if it is cancer, it's going to be okay. If it's not cancer, it'll be okay. And so then she invited me to some breast cancer support group meetings with her that she had been going to. And just being able to listen to those stories of survival and hearing about all the new technology and everything, I became more educated in breast cancer. But at the same time, I was still just really curious as to why just a mammogram was able to determine that I just had a cyst.
Yeah, I think that's such a God thing that your friend called you the day after.
Yes.
And here you already had this almost a knowing. When I hear you tell your story, it's kind of like, no, that can't be right.
Yes.
But what a gift to go to the support group and to hear the different perspectives. And I know you were curious during that time.
Yes, I was curious and still afraid because during that time frame, the cyst continued to just grow and get bigger. And coincidentally, my left arm and wrist had like completely swollen up, and I just had a lot of really strange things going on. And I kept going back to my doctor, and she never did really have a good answer as to why things were happening. And so I was just laying in bed one night and I was just praying about it. And when I woke up the next morning, God put it on my heart to call a dear friend, Dr. Carl Lee. And I just asked him, if he knew of someone who could help me. He's a gynecologist, so I knew that was not really his, expertise. Mm-hmm. So I asked him, did he know anyone? He referred me to someone that, did go on ahead and take that extra step and do that biopsy and discover that it was breast cancer.
So, you've touched on something that we preach around here. You've got to be your own advocate. You've got to keep insisting that until you feel comfortable, until you have that final answer. Yes. So many women have, of course, nobody wants to hear this answer. Yes. Nobody wants to hear that diagnosis. Right. But if we don't, no one's even going to know that what's going on. So that's so important for everyone to hear, and especially our young women. Yes, because it's just looked at, okay, you are, at the time I was just 36, so it's just a cyst. It's not, you're just too young. Right. And how old were your children then? At the time, my son was 9 and my daughter was 15. So yeah. Yeah, you did have quite a bit of responsibility then. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Critical times in their lives. Yes. And so my take after getting properly diagnosed, I just prayed and just told God. I said, I'm not afraid to die, but if you can keep me here for my children, because they still need me. But you were single at the time. Yes. So, besides your faith, where did your support come from? Oh, it came from friends, family, my coworkers at the time. I had a ton of support when it came down to helping me with my children, and I had some friends who did some fundraisers, and I also had some other friends who helped me get my children back and forth to school. So I had a nice support group when it came down to the regular day-to-day. And you just touched upon something, because you were insured at the time. Yes. But we forget how many other costs go along with any kind of treatment plan that are not covered by insurance or partially covered by insurance. Yes. And women are always having to make the terrible decision on, what do I not do? Or what do I give up? Or what are my kids going to have to give up for this? How did you handle that? Well, by God's grace, I didn't really have to make too many difficult decisions, because I had so many people that just reached out. I had people that gave gift cards, so I ordered from restaurants. I had people that dropped off food. I mean, I had all kinds of support when it came down to that. And I didn't qualify for a lot of the programs that are typically available. So that put me in a tough spot, because I was right in the middle of the guidelines per se. And where there was actually still a need, that the help was just not there. Yeah. That unfortunately is the way that it often works. But now tell us what your treatment was. What did you have? Well, I started out with a mastectomy on the right breast, where it was completely removed, and it also removed some lymph nodes in my right armpit. And then I moved over to doing 12 weeks of Taxol. And then after that, I did 4 treatments of the Red Devil. I don't remember the actual name. No, that is good enough. Anyone in breast cancer knows what you're talking about, and that's just fine. Yes. And then I did 6 weeks of radiation. Then shortly after that, I was able to start the reconstruction process. So you really had the full gamut. I did. Yeah. It was a very long process. Yeah. When did that? How old were you when all that finished? I would say I was almost 38. Yes. And that's the other part of any diagnosis. It can be 6 months, it can be a year, it can be 2 years. And, everyone is different. Everyone's cancer is different. Yes. And I do think that you mentioned this, and I thought, we need to include that. When you said people gave you gift cards to go and eat out or buy food or whatever?
Yes, it was both. It was to buy groceries at H-E-B, to order pizza for my kids, or just whatever, I mean, it was a number of things. I even had someone who gave me some gift cards to Marshall's because I needed to get different shirts. Because you have the tubings after surgery, and I couldn't pull my shirts over. I had some people who actually gave me shirts in addition to the gift cards. And so it was, it was, everyone just kind of thought of what could I possibly need. And it was actually, delivered in so many ways, not just in a monetary, but just spiritually and emotionally as well. I had a ton of people praying and texting just to check on me. I mean, it was a lot of support.
That is so fortunate. Yeah. And you remind all of us that we always think, well, what is it I can do? Or, they go to the patient and say, what do you need? Well, at that point, you don't have a clue what you need.
No idea, because everything is just coming at you.
Yeah. And your mind is not on this. It's on what you've got to do next to stay alive.
Yes.
Yeah. So what a great team you had around you.
Yes.
Great group of people.
Yes.
And I think that is something that we almost need a cheat sheet that says, here's the things you can do when your friend is diagnosed. Here, here's what you can go get. That would probably be a benefit to most of us because we never know. Now, you didn't come to the Rose during that time. How did you learn about the Rose?
I learned about the Rose years later. I was invited to an event at the African American Museum by Elizabeth. She's the one who did the Cast to Empower project that she did. I was one of her models.
Oh.
Yes.
Now, stop right there. Tell us what that is all about.
Oh, that was a great project that she did. She gathered a lot of breast cancer survivors, and she casted our abdomens. And our breasts as well.
Right.
And then she decorated them according to our personality or our journey. And she decorated my cast, and she named it I Heart Imani. And the reason why she named it I Heart Imani was because when I was going through treatment, I was told that I could not have any more children. I was going to be infertile. Well, I had my third child after treatment.
Oh, my goodness.
So she named my cast according to one of the biggest blessings that came out of my survival. And that was my daughter, Imani.
Oh, that is so sweet.
And it's beautiful. I love my cast. I have it. It's in my home.
I was going to ask you, what did you do with it?
I have it. I still have it.
I remember she did a tour once with them and actually had everybody on display, and that was such a unique project.
It was. It was very heart touching. She did a exhibit at the Bissong Museum, I believe is the name of it. And she had us all go out and stand next to our cast, and they were up for auction to be purchased. And those that were not purchased, we just pretty much still have them.
So let's go back to how you met us.
Okay. At that event with Elizabeth, Chris Noble, she came and she made an announcement that she needed to start her army. And when she was talking more about the Rose and, what the mission of the Rose, and then she also introduced Kim Roxy and told, the story of her mother. And I was just really inspired to become a part of that, because I know what it feels like to have a need, and to experience a diagnosis like that. And so I just wanted to, first learn what can I do to give back to the mission of the Rose. And so I signed up for her army, and the rest is history. I love Chris Noble. I love all that she does, and she's just contagious, but in a great way,
And Chris has worked for us over 10 years now, I believe, and I've known her for many, many years. But until I was, talking with you, I didn't know that she actually went out and said, I need an army. Yes. I mean, I think if I had known that, I might have said, Chris, let's be a little careful here. Yes. But, Chris just goes out and does what she wants. But that outreach increased awareness.
Yes, it did.
I cannot tell you how many people we diagnosed. And the interesting thing was with her outreach and the awareness program that she was doing in the churches or anywhere that she could go talk, we saw this 19% increase in Black women coming to us.
That's awesome.
But the odd thing was over 90% of them were insured. Our message truly is to the uninsured and says, if you need a mammogram, call us. Let's see if we can help. But that just reinforced to me there's not enough awareness and there's not enough trust out there.
Yes.
It's still one of those diseases that's not talked about.
Yes. It's not talked about. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, there's not enough trust. We don't really know what to believe because in my particular situation, had I stuck with what was originally diagnosed, I would have not survived because by the time I was actually diagnosed, I was stage 3, and I actually had 2 kinds of breast cancer.
Which ones?
I had ductal carcinoma in my breast, and then I had metastatic sarcomatoid breast cancer in the lymph nodes. Yes, and so it was ready to just take over, basically, by the point. By the time I made it to actually having surgery and having, the mastectomy done.
How long ago was that?
That was in 2009.
Okay.
Yes, August 2009. I found the lump in February 2009, sometime like early February, and then I was diagnosed late August.
Okay.
Yes.
So when did you feel like, okay, I'm out of the woods with this?
I don't think I've ever taken that stance.
Okay.
Yes. I still get my scans every year. Whenever I feel like something doesn't feel right, I go in. I am a survival patient at MD Anderson, so I still go to the survivor side, but treated as a preventive patient.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Well, and I think that's another important message. You never really feel like you are out of the woods. No. But you have to be very diligent and keep in mind that taking care of yourself is the first thing you have to do.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that is true. Yeah.
So I know that you've already told us one of your gifts was your daughter, your third child, that you had been told, oh, no, you'll never have another child.
Yes.
And she's how old now?
10.
10. Oh, my goodness.
She's about to be 11 in August.
So what other gift came to you from having breast cancer?
Oh, just a whole new outlook. With my children, especially my 2 oldest children, coincidentally, they became very close after the diagnosis. They shared a lot with me. There were a few things I didn't even know that they were even dealing with. Like one of the things that they shared was that they were always afraid that I might not wake up one day. And so that increased their connection. They have such a big age gap. And so I was always really surprised that they would argue like they did prior to, but after that, they really became close.
So the connection was with each other or with you? Or?
With each other. Yes, with each other.
They became each other's support.
Yes, they became each other's support. My oldest daughter, she played a very big part in as far as like supporting my son with helping him to understand everything. She turned 16 during the whole process, and she was at a support group with him and his friends. Because at the time, for some reason, they didn't have a support group for her age group at that time at MD Anderson. I'm not sure if they ever changed that or not, but at the time they didn't have one for her, so she would just sit in with him and listen in with, and kind of help with him.
There's a way of thinking out there that it's the younger children that need that counseling or that support or that, here's what's happening to mommy. But I tell you what, when it's mommy, it doesn't matter what age you are.
Exactly.
You need it when
she
it's,
had her, yes, she had her concerns and her fears as well, And so I would say that the blessing out of all of that was, was their connection, to each other. And I have so many blessings. I'm sitting here trying to think, what did I, Imani, the connection with my children, learning how to overcome fear, learning how to really, really rely on my faith. That was definitely a time in my life where I really had to lean on my faith because you really have no control. You don't. And so that was a time where I really, really leaned in on my faith.
And when you talk about the gifts, certainly you've gifted the rose because you've been one of our lead volunteers in Chris's army.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and how, what do you do when you're out there with her and helping and...
Well, I've done commercials with her for Chick-fil-A. I have participated in exhibits. I have attended the church, I guess what you would say, where she goes to recruit at the churches, or just the informative meetings at the church. I have attended a number of events with her, just spreading their awareness, with...
And telling your story.
Yes, and sharing my story for sure. Yes.
Yeah, because the one message we've got to get across is about the young woman having breast cancer. Absolutely. Yes. Cancer, we all know, is a family disease. It's something everybody has some experience with, no matter who it is that's diagnosed. And are your children extra sensitive when it comes time for you to have your annual screenings, or do you ever pick that up?
They have gotten better with that, I guess, because the time has gone by. But they do still have their concerns.
What about you?
Well, as time has gone by, the scans have increased into other things, and that's mainly because I'm getting older. Whereas before it was just mainly just focusing on my breast. Now I have, the colon screenings and.
Believe me.
Yes.
I wish our listeners were right here looking at you, because you do not look like you need to be on that age list at all. My goodness.
Thank you. Because it's been a while. I'm going on 14 years.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So now you have everything else to consider.
Yes.
So what are your special dreams for your children?
Well, primarily would be for them to live happy, healthy lives, according to God's purpose for them. My oldest daughter, she is a certified behavior analyst, and that is definitely a calling for her. She does that naturally. I mean, she just gravitates to children, and they gravitate to her, and that her specialty is really more involved with like working with autistic children, and it just comes so natural for her. My son, he just graduated from UTSA with a public policy degree. He is still kind of, testing the waters a little bit just to trying to see what direction he wants to go with that. And so, I mean, he just literally just graduated. And so he's still kind of working through that. And then Imani, she's, she loves her dancing and everything. And so that's her happy place at the moment. So
do you ever worry that you might not be here for them?
Yes, I do.
Still,
yes. And it's still a prayer for me to still be here. I know at the end of the day, God, will take care of them if I'm not here, but I still, would like to be here for them.
Absolutely. And I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but were you concerned about your body image or anything like that?
Yes, I was originally. But once it all started to happen, it didn't really bother me. I was worried about my hair. I was wondering how I was going to handle that. But I didn't cut it. I just let it fall out. And I think that was probably easier to deal with that way versus just cutting it off.
LaTrease, you did remarry.
Yes.
And that had to be during the time of your treatment and diagnosis. I mean, tell us about that, because it's very hard to deal with what's going on with your body and still be in a relationship.
Yes, I was in a relationship with my current husband during all of this, but we got married years after, after the diagnosis and everything. Yes, and he played a huge part in the support. I mean, he always had words of encouragement. He was helping me financially. He pulled through quite a bit, for me during that time. And he was actually one of the ones that was like, encouraging me to continue to ask questions and find out more about what was happening, because he didn't, feel like I had the right answers either.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
So, LaTrease, if you had two things that you could put on billboards all over the city, what would they be?
Be your own advocate and listen to your body.
What would you say to someone who had the pushback that you had, that when your doctor kept saying it's a cyst?
Listen to your body and just keep pushing, because my body was definitely letting me know that it was not just a cyst.
And it was telling you that how?
By the swelling, the cyst just kept getting bigger. It was really warm to touch. And it was just, my whole body itself just felt really, really bad. I was always fatigued, really forgetful. I knew something was just not right.
So when you know something's just not right, keep finding someone else to go to.
Yes.
Until you get an answer that you feel comfortable with. It doesn't mean it has to be different, but that you feel comfortable with.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for being a part of Chris's army.
Yes.
Thank you for helping us get this word out. And I think what you said is probably the most important thing we could ever end any of our episodes with. Take care of yourself. Listen to yourself. Listen to your body. Be your own advocate.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you again.
It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you for joining us today on Let's Talk About Your Breasts. This podcast is brought to you by The Rose. Visit therose.org to learn more about our organization. Subscribe to our podcast, share episodes with friends, and join the conversation on social media using hashtag Let's Talk About Your Breasts. We welcome your feedback and suggestions. Consider supporting The Rose. Your gift can make the difference to a person in need. And remember, self-care is not selfish. It's essential.